Okay, I am now going to turn it over to United Umpires Chief Executive Officer Alex Skandalis.
Thanks, Brian. Hello, everyone. Looks like 167. That's pretty good. Welcome to kind of our first, maybe second, but first large endeavor into kind of a virtual training environment that really kind of pushes the realm of the newest of new umpires to, umpires I know that are signed up that have some Division I experience or professional experience. So we're excited to have you. And a lot of people have asked me, like, why are we doing this? And there's really two reasons. I think number one, throughout our whole area, we need umpires, and we need umpires to be trained better. We need umpires to keep improving, keep pushing the envelope. And we think that we have something to offer in that area, and we're happy to do it. We're also, as kind of one of the nationwide umpiring programs, we take on the responsibility, and we're going to take the lead on some of this training stuff. And that's why we have people like Brian and Todd and Donnie and guys who can really help with our training initiative here. So we're looking forward to it. And there's a lot of great information out there in terms of umpiring, umpire training, and umpiring is not always black and white. So one of the things that I'll say to everyone here is, if you hear something here a little bit different, if you hear something a little bit different here than maybe you heard somewhere else, that's okay, and vice versa. You're adding to your toolbox. There isn't always one way to skin a cat. Sorry, Brian. We will teach to kind of the highest level. We will teach to a level probably above maybe where our newest umpires are. So if you find yourself in a situation where things are starting to move quickly, just stick with it. It's okay. We'll be here to answer questions. We'll be here to help move this along. I think to that point, every week we'll move at a little bit of a different speed. And when you're looking at such a large number of people and umpires, obviously everyone is in a different spot. So certainly don't feel like if we're talking about something very, very basic for 15 or 20 minutes, that you can't jump away, take care of something you got to take care of, and jump back in when we talk about a different topic. Just keep in mind some of the things that Brian has said. Number one, make sure you're muted. And then also, if you're running around and not really paying attention to this, it might be a good idea to shut your video off for a few minutes. So just keep all those things in mind. But every single thing we talk about here in the next 5 weeks is not going to apply to every single person. So if there's something you want to jump off for, certainly feel free. Just remember, we're going to be somewhere between 150 and probably 250 umpires for every one of these. It's really tough to do anything other than a lecture format. We'll do our best with the chat sessions to try to answer some questions, but when you're looking at a 90-minute time frame with that many umpires involved, just understand it's tough to kind of grab every single little individual question. Last but not least, I'm sure there's going to be people, umpires, who want to grab some of this stuff either through a screen recording and use it with their local associations, use it with youth umpire training. And I will tell you that we do not have a problem with that. We actually would encourage you to use some of the stuff. The only thing that, of course, we do ask is give credit to where it came from, and just, don't use our stuff and then not give credit for it. And that's just something that's important to us, obviously, kind of as the people that have taken the time to put some of this stuff together. So that's kind of my kind of overview. And I think Brian has worked really hard on this with a ton of other people from the organization. You're going to hear from a bunch of different people over the course of 5 weeks. And then for those of you who are exploring this more than just virtually, you're going to get a ton out of the in-person aspect of this as well. And so I'll stop talking now and give you guys an opportunity, guys and gals, an opportunity to to hear from Brian and from other great instructors. And good luck, and look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Alex. Todd, is there currently anything in the chat box that we need to deal with? Okay, I'll take that as a no.
No, Brian, we're good. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So given that a lot of you are either brand new to United or on the newer side to United, certainly our training, I wanted to talk a little bit about what our approach is. And really it starts with examining the theory that's out there. So for every detail of umpiring, not just the calls that we make, but every movement and decision we make around the field, we want to examine the theory that's out there and decide if it's useful or not. And we're going to reject the ideas that don't prove useful any longer. I think it's important to note that just because something is popular or because you've heard it for a long time doesn't mean it's the best approach. And that's what we're really trying to get down to, is making sure that we make the right decisions in all cases around the field. And so then to find what that right approach is, we're really going to have a scientific approach to making those decisions. We're not going to take Brian DeBrouwer's idea about what he thinks is the best thing to do. We're going to take all of our people and look at video and analyze it and come up with what we think is the best practice. And then at the end of all that, we're going to always strive to explain the why. We're not just going to say, stand here and do this. We're going to explain, here's why you should do that. Here's why we think you should make that decision or that movement. So the why is very important to us. And we're going to try hard to explain that in each case. And then last, but certainly not least, is we're always going to strive to lift umpires up rather than pull down. When you talk to umpires who have gotten out of umpiring baseball games, one of the big reasons that they give is they don't feel supported. They don't feel like their peers or their assigners have their back. And that's something that we really want to work hard to change. And so we're going to focus on the mindset that goes along with being positive and lifting people up rather than pulling them down. So we're going to talk a lot about why we think umpiring has evolved. And really, to boil that down into its simplest statement, this is what a baseball game looked like in the year 2001. This is World Series Game 7 compared to World Series Game 7 in 2021. And so when we present ideas that we think are better now than they used to be, this is the reason why. And to sum that up, in the past, umpiring instruction was given to people so that they could umpire for the dugouts. They wanted to make dugouts happy. And so that's why you did things like backed away from plays and be set for plays. That's why advice like that was appropriate, because when you're trying to get a play correct based on what the dugout sees, you might as well have a similar look as the dugout far away. Now, in 2022 and moving forward, we have to umpire for the camera. And we just showed a bunch of Major League Baseball games. And you might be saying, well, I don't work Major League Baseball games. I work 16U or 14U. Well, guess what? Those games have HD video as well. This is one of our facilities down in the Georgia area. It is covered by 6 high-definition cameras. And if your field isn't covered by high-definition cameras, guess what? Johnny's little mom is sitting behind you with her iPhone that shoots HD video. And if you're not prepared to get calls right with that being the barometer for success, then you're not ready to umpire in the year 2022. And so that's how we've built our approach to teaching umpiring. not for getting calls correct based on what the dugout sees, but working hard to get calls correct based on what the camera sees. All right, so that was some broad kind of theory, just getting us started. Now let's dive into the very basics of getting started in umpiring. That we have, first of all, it's outstanding that on this call and throughout the course of our training this month, we have many people who are umpiring or going to be umpiring for their first time, never umpired a baseball game before in their life. They're coming from the playing side or the coaching side, and that's outstanding. And so we want to train those people that are very new to this. What do you do to get started? Well, you start with find your local assigner. And if you don't know who your local assigner is, ask the league who assigns their umpires. They'll give you a person's name. That's who you can start with. Your local assigner is going to point you in the right direction to get started with umpiring. At the end of our session tonight, we're going to put up our recruiting coordinator, Nobu, go to his information if you are interested in umpiring for United in any of our sites, in any of our leagues. He's the person to contact right now. After you find a local assigner, you want to try to find a mentor, somebody that you can rely on to ask questions about all of the things that you are brand new to as an umpire. And really what you want to try to do is find someone who has achieved one of those intermediate goals that you might have, whether it's umpiring high school baseball or American Legion baseball or college baseball, somebody who's achieved something that you want to achieve that can help you along. After that, you're going to want to look at uniforms, and we're going to talk a lot more about uniforms tonight. But it is very important to look the part. We want to look the part of an umpire. And then before you go out on the field and make your first live baseball game call, we've got to practice. There's not too many endeavors in life that you do for real before without practicing beforehand. So this is step one. Listening to these Zoom calls and getting this information is a good step one. Step two would be attending some sort of in-person training. But then it's really up to you. And this is where that mentor comes in handy, somebody that can continue to build the skills that are necessary to be a productive umpire as you start your career. All right, so let's talk about uniforms. This is going to be our first order of business. Get the correct kind of pants. These days, the most popular type of pant is this poly spandex. This brand is called Smitty, S-M-I-T-T-Y. And the color that baseball umpires wear these days is charcoal. So we're looking for charcoal poly spandex pants. This is a good way to look the part. And important to note, there are really three different kinds of pants when it comes to umpiring. There are base pants, like we just saw on that previous screen. These would be plate pants, which are going to be cut a little bit wider through the leg so that you can fit your shin guards underneath them. They're also reinforced in the seat, just so you don't rip through them while you're in your plate stance. And then the last type of pant would be a combo pant, and that kind of exists between those two widths of the legs. So a little bit wider than a base pant, a little bit narrower than a combo pant. So figure out what you need to get. But if you are going to work both the plate and the bases, which most every umpire is, then we want to have both of those options available to us. So we also need shirts, and most important is to check with your local organization or whoever you're working for to make sure that the shirt you're getting is the shirt that they're using. These days, this MLB style shirt with the gray panel down the side and the gray piping around the collar has become the most popular. You can find this made by a couple of different brands, Majestic, and then that same Smitty as well. The other type of shirt you would want to get is this light blue. In the past, it seems like umpires used to wear a variety of different colors. Nowadays, it's really Much simpler. It's black or light blue. Every now and then you mix in some other colors, but those would be the two colors that you want to get to start. It's not a bad idea to get two different shirts, one for the plate and one for the bases, so that you can have something that's a little bigger to fit your chest protector underneath, and then a little bit snugger when you're working the bases. You're probably going to need to wear a jacket at some point in your umpiring career. Again, check with your local organization to make sure that whatever jacket you're wearing is what they wear, but the standard, easiest to match is this all black convertible jacket. And it's convertible because you can remove the sleeves and have a little bit of versatility with this jacket, where you can wear it when it's warmer, but it might be raining. And do take note that the bottom of this jacket is unhemmed. However, it does have an elastic band, and that elastic band is what you're going to use to cinch that jacket up and keep it up higher around your, just below your belt. Some people prefer to tuck their jackets in. If there's elastic on it, you really don't need to do that, but to each their own. Umpire hats really come in 3 different versions, and that's based on the number of stitches on the hat, on the brim of the hat. This hat would be a 4-stitch hat, which you could wear on the plate because the brim is going to be a little bit shorter. A 6-stitch hat exists a little bit further out from the head. It's a bit more natural looking. That's the one that I would recommend getting, especially because you're going to learn exactly how to take your mask off the correct way. So you don't need a shorter hat if you learn how to take your mask off correctly when you're working the plate. Also, in terms of uniform, we need some undergarments. Black undergarments are the way to go. Black tights, black compression shirts or dry fit type shirts, and black socks underneath your uniform is what we want to see. With that, I will pause for questions or for any of our instructors to add anything they feel is warranted.
Guys, the one thing that I can definitely say about uniforms is just trying to maintain the cleanliness of them. It goes into the whole appearance, looking the part. If we could all just help maintain that, it goes a long way within the community. It really does.
That's great advice, Donnie, making sure that your uniforms stay clean. And the last point I want to make on uniforms, the enemy of uniforms, there's 2 enemies, and that's the sun and warm water. Okay, so when you are keeping your uniforms clean, do it in cold water and on the low setting of the dryer, or don't even dry them at all, and try to keep them out of the back seat of your car unless you can cover them up so that they're not getting beaten down on by the sun at all times. So the sun and warm water, keep your stuff away from them. All right, let's talk a little bit about equipment. You need to have some gear to work the plate. Let's talk about what that gear looks like. This is an umpire chest protector. Really, I would recommend getting this hard plastic type of chest protector for anything that's above 70 miles per hour. If you're going to work only games where they're not throwing that hard, then a soft shell chest protector would be okay. But you don't want to take shots too much above 70 with anything less than this hard plastic. I think this Champion chest protector in particular is a very good one because it's about half the cost of just about every other hard plastic chest protector. And it's also nice and low profile, especially if you're a more slender umpire like myself. Sometimes those chest protectors can get kind of bulky under your shirt. This chest protector is especially low profile and looks great on those more slender umpires. One other piece of advice I'd give you about chest protectors, make sure that you have your chest protector set up high we see a lot of umpires with their harness straps very loose, and that chest protector starts to drop down and expose the collarbone area. This collarbone area is where we want to protect. Down on the belly, you can get hit by foul balls all day long down there, and they're really not going to hurt. So protect your collarbone by making sure that your harness is tightened properly. And a flexible harness is a really nice addition to just about any chest protector. A harness with a little bit of flex to it, which you can find on just about any umpire gear site, is going to be a great investment. Next up, we have shin guards. And the most important thing to consider about your shin guards is they have to be long enough to cover over top of your knee as you are squatting down. So if you put a shin guard on and you're standing straight up and down and it's just barely covering your kneecap, that kneecap is going to be exposed when you go down into a squat. So you want to make sure that you have something that's kind of creeping up above the knee when you're standing straight up and down, so that when you squat down, you're still protecting that area. One note I'll make on umpire shin guards here, if you can see the bottom part of the shin guard, there's always an extra pad or plate attached to these. If you're wearing proper plate shoes, you do not need that pad or plate. You can cut it off so that your pants will sit much cleaner around your plate shoes. We'll see exactly what we're talking about with plate shoes later. All right, masks. We need a good mask. There's really two different kinds of options when it comes to masks. Now it'd be a hockey style mask or a traditional mask. This traditional mask right here is called the Force 3. If you're concerned about concussions, if you've had concussions throughout your athletic career, and you're concerned about that as an umpire, this Force 3 is the only thing that's proven to reduce the impact of foul balls. You can see the springs that are attached to the sides and bottom, and that's supposed to absorb some of the shock so that it's not being transferred into your brain, I suppose. One note on masks, if you're going to attach a throat guard to a mask, that throat guard does not go on the very bottom bar of the mask. The throat guard goes on the next bar up. Okay. So the bar that hangs down here is the throat guard that's built in to the mask. There's a bar right at the bottom of the kind of facial structure of the mask. That's where you want to attach your throat guard. It's going to be much cleaner. It's going to look better, and it's going to protect you better because it's going to sit closer to your body and prevent that ball that bounces down and comes up into your throat, which is really the only one that we're worried about as an umpire. That straight on shot is going to be protected by the actual bar of the mask. The only added protection you get from a hockey style mask is for side and top impact. If you want that added protection, but you don't love how a hockey style mask looks, more and more umpires are wearing a hard shell helmet underneath their traditional mask. So you can opt to go that route. We're seeing those more and more, even in Major League Baseball, the highest levels of college baseball, that hard catcher style helmet underneath a traditional mask, if you want that additional protection on the sides and top. This is a base shoe. So really your base shoe can be anything that is a turf style shoe, predominantly black, good traction on the bottom. And most people these days are mixing some white into their shoes. If you're an all black type of umpire and you want that all black look, it's certainly fine to go that route as well. But you really want to make sure that your base shoes are comfortable, have good traction, and are easy to clean. Okay. This leather on the top here makes it super easy to just spray it and wipe it down very quick. Okay. You don't want something that's predominantly cloth, because when you get, those rainy, muddy days, it's a little bit harder to deal with cleaning. This is what a plate shoe looks like. And I talked about the protection that comes on the plate shoe, and how you don't need that bottom part of the shin guard. This metatarsal plate is going to protect that same area that the shin guard piece that we can cut off protects. So we're good with our protection on our plate shoe. The other thing that plate shoes have is a hard plastic toe. You don't want that foul ball that gets past the catcher to hit you in the toe without some additional protection down there. Okay, umpire belts. This is not just a black dress belt. If you're wearing umpire pants, the belt loops on those pants are going to be slightly wider, and we need a belt that fits into them. So umpire belts are 1 3/4 inches. 1 3/4 inches. Those umpire belts should fill up the belt loops. You have two choices when it comes to belts, and that's patent leather or this more matte style leather. Whichever you feel like is best for you, go on ahead. Now, when we're working the plate attached to our belt, we're going to have a ball bag. Really, you want something that's large enough to hold at least 4 baseballs per side. This ball bag in particular is called the Drylo, Drylo, and it's made with a layer that sits against your pants that is waterproof. And so if you're sweating, if you're working anywhere that it's hot out, especially on turf these days, and you're sweating through your pants, that waterproof layer on the underside of the ball bag will keep the baseballs from getting soaked with sweat, which is a nice thing to have. One decision that you have to make when it comes to your ball bags is whether you want them with internal pockets or without internal pockets. I suggest getting them with internal pockets so that you can keep your indicator and plate brush in there. It's also a good place to put a hand warmer when it's chilly out. Speaking of indicators, there's a couple different styles of indicators. This would be a 3-wheel indicator. We also have a 4-wheel indicator. Among those two different styles, there's also another option, which is, you can see this is a 3-strike, 4-ball, 3-out indicator. Some indicators come with 2 strikes, 3 balls, and 2 outs, with the understanding that that last click isn't necessary because now we've ended that at bat. And last but not least is our cup. This is a Nutty Buddy. This is what I use. Some people don't love them, but I think it is very comfortable and offers great protection. The one piece of advice I'll give when it comes to cups, make sure you get something that is snug and you don't have to fidget with throughout the course of a game. There's nothing that looks worse than an umpire who's constantly digging around their crotch rather than focusing on umpiring the baseball game. So if you are interested in United hats and other equipment, our uniform supplier is Stripes and Strikes. Here's the website. Feel free to visit them and see if they have any of the things that you need as a new umpire. Todd and Donnie, any questions or things to add?
Just to touch on one thing about cleaning your uniform. If you also clean your equipment, that's also a part of the job. So if you show up 10, 15 minutes early, you clean your base shoes, you clean your plate shoes. Also, the ball bags can get a little dirty. You know, when the balls are dusty, you're moving your hand in and out. It just gives that overall appearance that you're looking the part. And it goes a long way out on the field. It really does.
Absolutely. Doesn't take a ton of time, but that little investment, like Donnie said, is a great decision. All right, let's talk about stances. Play helps.
All right, so we've made it out to the A position here, and we've got to figure out how to stand on the baseball field. Really, there's two main stances that umpires use as the base umpire, and that would be hands on knees, or hands on knees stance, or a standing set position, which would just be a more relaxed, athletic way to stand. So when you are the wing umpire, when you're outside in foul territory and you don't have a runner that you're dealing with at first base, and in the two umpire system, we'll never be here with a runner on first base, we can choose to use this standing set position to be a little bit more relaxed than the hands on knees, a little bit more athletic and able to move. So let's talk about this standing set and what we want to see that's going to make it a good position for us to be in. First order of business is our outside foot is going to be forward, okay? Here's where all the action is. I want to be able to easily turn towards that action. If my outside foot is backwards, it's harder for me to turn and be ready for the action. So my outside foot is forward. What's important is that I don't get myself turned all the way to the side here to look at the plate with just my head. I want to face the plate with my shoulders and hips so that when I have something like a ball coming straight down the line at me, I can move in either direction with some athleticism. If I get myself turned like this and my hips and shoulders are facing this way, it's going to be harder for me to move backwards away from a possible ball bounding over the base. So I'm really concerned about getting my hips and shoulders facing the plate and being set for that pitch as it's delivered. Another thing that's nice about this standing set position is you can kind of walk into your position, be set for the pitch, and then relax, take a couple steps back. So as the fielders are getting set into their position, we can do the same thing. Now, if you prefer the hands on knees, or if we're talking about working inside, we're going to take a hands on knees position. But it's not as simple as just putting your hands on your knees, because there's some things that we want to do well here that's going to set us up to succeed. For me, that means keeping my feet just wider than my hips. I see some umpires that start a hands on knees position like this. It's harder to move from this position. So start in a more athletic position, bend at the waist, and gently place your hands on your knees. If I have all my weight forward on my hands, it's going to be harder for me to move out of this position because I have to rebound my weight off my hands and then make a decision to move in one direction or another. So my feet are just wider than shoulder width. My hands are lightly placed on my knees. You can go over top of your knees, to the sides. You can kind of reverse your hands like this if you'd like. Either way, we're doing that with very light pressure so that I can move quickly out of that stance. That's how we're going to stand.
What I should have said at the end of that video is that's our stance on stances. So this is how we're trying to build umpires, from the most basic level of decisions all the way through to the most complicated. You go out and stand on a baseball field. How do you stand? Well, here's some things to think about. Do we have any questions that we want to address on stances or anything to add? All right, hands on knees and standing set. Those are the two types of stances that we're going to work on. Now let's talk about signals. Signals. I think we got a hot mic. Just make sure that your mic is muted. So when it comes to signals, before we get into the specific signals themselves, I want to talk about how we instruct signals. I think we poison a lot of new umpires by talking about selling our calls before we talk about what's the process of making a decision and then rendering that call. So when we train our new umpires, and when all of you out there who are instructors for your local organizations, go to train new umpires, let's not talk about selling it. Let's talk about using our eyes properly and responding to the play that's in front of us rather than just reacting quickly as something happens. We want to get things correct these days. Selling it comes later. So let's look at some signals. Let's look at out calls here. And out call always starts with proper use of eyes. Out call always starts with proper use of eyes. And when I say proper use of eyes, when it comes to an out call, that means checking to make sure that you have firm and secure possession by the fielder who has applied the tag or retired the runner via force. So proper use of eyes is a term that we're going to hear a lot over the next 5 weeks. So proper use of eyes on out calls is absolutely part of how we train this mechanic. Proper use of eyes, and now we signal. And now, once we get to the signal, what we want to see is that elbow up to shoulder height and snapping off our fist like you're knocking on a door. If you're sitting there at home, go ahead and give me an out call. Elbow up high, snap off our fist like we're knocking on a door. One note for out calls. Also, by the way, thanks to Scott Hart. He's our demo model here, local Division I umpire from the central Pennsylvania area. He's going to be out helping us with our in-person training. So thank you so much, Scott. Take note of Scott's wrist. We want that thing to be straight. We want that wrist to be straight. If you want to put some flair into your call, that's fine. But look at my wrist. It's still straight. We see this happen too much with that bent wrist. Not the best look. So keep that wrist straight. Wherever it is that you're going to give your mechanic, keep that wrist straight. It's going to look much more professional. All right, let's talk about safe calls. Okay, safe calls. While there's no proper use of eyes necessary on a safe call, we still want to go through the process of confirming what we've seen in our head and then make a decision. Now, when we teach safe calls, what's most important is making sure that our elbows and wrists stay in line with our shoulders. So what you're going to see Scott do here is get his elbows up to about shoulder height and then extend from there. So elbows go up to shoulder height and then he extends from there. We are going to see a couple other versions of a safe call here. This would be safe off the bag, and you can see the way he steps into that mechanic, steps towards the way he is giving the signal. And then another version of a safe call here would be safe, he dropped the ball. Note that when Scott points down at the ball, when Scott points down, he is not pointing at the ball itself. You don't want to be accused of coaching the defense where the ball is. All you're doing is telling people that this runner was safe because the ball is on the ground. So safe, drop the ball, or safe, ball's on the ground. Let's look at some bad safe mechanics. Those arms going way up high are what we want to prevent by having good foundational mechanics here. So that's why we're getting our elbows to our shoulder height and extending from there. Elbows go to shoulder height and we extend from there. Now, one of the ways that umpires have been taught to give safe calls for a very long time is this kind of zombie safe. And this forces you certainly to have your hands and elbows at shoulder height. The reality here is nobody looks good doing this on a field. So rather than teaching this zombie safe call, we're going to get our hands to our chest and extend from there. So hands to the chest and extend from there. That's going to be how we build a nice safe mechanic. Hands to the chest and extend. Hands to the chest and extend. Okay, our next mechanic is that's a catch. That's a catch. So Scott, in the two umpire system, has the option to go out on a trouble ball. We're going to talk plenty more about that stuff later. But if the outfielder makes a play on this ball, he's going to give a nice high mechanic. He's going to give a nice high mechanic. Why is he doing this up in the air rather than down at the chest level? Well, we want to show everyone behind us that we have a catch. And if I do my that's a catch mechanic down low, the people behind me can't see it. So that's why we want to get our hand up high, when we're calling catches in the outfield. Now, one note on this signal of that's a catch. This does not need to be given when outfielders make routine plays. Okay. It does not need to be given when outfielders make routine plays. If you are going to give this signal, it should only happen after proper use of eyes. Okay. Proper use of eyes on catches in the outfield looks like verifying firm and secure possession, some sort of voluntary release based on the rule set that you're working with. Then we can make the judgment that this ball has been caught. This ball has been caught. That only happens after proper use of eyes. So that's a catch. Now let's look at some close plays at first base, some close plays. And what we really want to reinforce here is that even on close plays, we are going to use our eyes properly. Even on close plays, we're going to use our eyes properly. Eyes go up, and now we can give that whacker mechanic. Now, when we're building mechanics, think about this in terms of throwing a baseball, okay? I don't step with the same side foot that I'm throwing. So if I'm a right-handed thrower, I don't step with my right foot and throw. I step with my left foot and throw. It's the same thing. It's the same thing when we're giving these whacker mechanics. I did just happen to catch a question in the chat box, which is, what are we doing with a no catch fly ball? So before I move on, I want to address that. Matt, good question. When the ball is not caught in the outfield, it's simply a safe mechanic. And you can either say no catch or ball is down. Ball's down doesn't include the word catch in it. And so we don't run the risk of confusing the fielders who may not see your signal. So balls down is a good alternative to no catch when we're talking about those. Let's take one more.
Brian, we had one other question real quick.
Yeah, lay it on me.
Jacob Perkins brought up, I've heard on a pulled foot, do we not want to make our way towards the pulled foot so we are even closer to the play?
So what I think, Jacob, you're talking about is adjusting for the pulled foot. And that's certainly going to be something that we talk about when we're actually reacting to these plays. So when we get to that part of our training, moving and adjusting to see the play better is something that we're going to do. You're correct. What we're not going to do, and this goes back to the old school advice that umpires used to get, we're not going to fake moving around the field after the play happened. So I was taught this when I was coming up. If you're not right on top of a play, see it happen and then take 4 or 5 more steps to get closer to it. That's eyewash. It's not helping you do anything other than lie to yourself about being in bad position. So after the fact, no, we're not going to move towards the play. Before the play develops, then yes, we would think about taking some adjustment steps. Okay. So we've got our whackers here. My shoulder's a little sore from doing that so many times. And now we're going to talk about fair fouls. Okay, fair fouls. This is something that umpires struggle with all the way through to the college level. We're constantly training college umpires about how to do this better. So let's try to build this in as new umpires. First order of business for a fair foul decision is we take those decisions straddling the line. Straddling the line. If we're going to have to make a decision on a fair foul, we should be straddling the line. Next, if a ball is going to drop and a fielder is going to touch that ball before it hits the ground, we need to be prepared to make a ruling on where, relative to the foul line, that ball was touched. Okay, so a ball is dropping and a fielder is going to touch it. As soon as that ball touches the leather of their glove or their body, we're going to signal which side of the line it touched them on. So this ball touched the fielder in fair territory, and now we're going to give the that's a catch signal if it's necessary. Okay, so the order of operations here is fair foul first, catch no catch second. Fair foul first, catch no catch second. Let's see it again. Fair, and it's a catch. Straddling the line. This ball was touched in foul territory, and it's a catch. Straddling the line, foul territory, and now the ball was dropped. Okay, so the ball was touched in foul territory, and then it was dropped. And you might be saying, why shouldn't I give a no catch signal here? Well, if a ball is touched in foul territory and then not caught, what kind of a ball is it? It's a foul ball. Okay, so by us saying that it's foul, we're also saying that it's not caught. Okay, if you catch a ball, it is not a foul ball. It's a caught ball. It's important to know the different types of status of the baseball. And that's something that we'll talk about later on in our training. So a couple other fair foul things to look at here. If we need to sell a fair call, this crossover point is a good way to do that. So crossing over and selling that with our opposite hand, or giving it a couple pumps with our same hand. And of course, some fair foul decisions are also boundary calls. So if this is a pull bender, we have a fair ball and then a home run. Okay. We are going to look now at the time or foul mechanic. Time or foul mechanic. But before we look at this mechanic, here's something I want to talk about. And that is using symptoms to identify problems. So if you are an umpire that signals foul often throughout the game on balls that are being fouled straight back behind you, and they're certainly foul, think about whether you are making a decision to give a mechanic or reacting by giving that mechanic. And I think the answer is going to be that you're reacting. You're saying, that ball's foul. Okay. Ball hits the bat. That ball's foul. And you're not really thinking about what you're doing. You're just reacting. Because the reality is, you don't need to tell anybody that a ball that goes straight behind you is foul. Everyone knows. Just like you don't need to tell anyone when an outfielder makes a catch up here that it's a catch. So think about whether you need to make a signal or a call. And if the answer is yes, then make that signal. But if the answer is no, just get back to business. We don't need to call foul ball when the ball's going straight behind us. Now, when we are going to give a time or foul signal, let's build that signal in the right way. We want to have our hands just wider than our shoulders and just higher than our shoulders. And really, this signal should originate from the shoulder, not the belt. Okay, the signal originates from the shoulder, not the belt.
2 balls, 1 strike.
Okay, now we're talking about giving the count. Think about who it is you're giving the count.
2 balls, 1 strike.
You see this from the front. Realize you're not just giving the count to the fielders out in front of you, you're giving the count to the people in the stands behind you and the press box that might be behind you. And so if you're giving the count down here, wherever it is, if you're giving the count down here, nobody that's behind you can see that. So what I like to do, give it to the people behind me, and then give it to the people behind me. Now, one decision that you're going to have to make about giving the count is, when should I do it? When should I give the count? Well, let's work backwards from 3 balls and 2 strikes, because we know we're going to give the count on 3 balls and 2 strikes. And what I don't want to do is also give the count on 2 balls and 2 strikes or 3 balls and 1 strike, because now I'm giving it back-to-back pitches, which I don't really need to do. So what I like to do is I give it on 2 balls, 1 strike, 1 ball, 2 strikes, and 3 balls and 2 strikes. Now, if we have a delay in the game, if we have a delay of some sort, where people may have forgotten the count, or certainly if you notice that the scoreboard is incorrect, then feel free to give the count and make sure that everyone's on the same page. But let's do this correctly so that everyone... Okay. Not our last, but getting towards the end of our signals here. We're going to talk about checked swings. So as the plate umpire, if I am saying, yes, this batter attempted to hit the pitch, that should be done like this.
Yes, he went.
Now, which arm does the umpire use to point at the batter with?
Yes.
In this case, it's the left arm, because that's the side that the batter is on. If we were dealing with a left-handed batter, then the umpire would use the arm on that side, which would look like, yes, he went. We never want our arm to cross over our field of vision. So if I'm saying that a lefty just offered at a pitch and I point like that, and anything happens down here below me, my arm is in the way. So we're always using the arm on the same side and then signaling strike. Note the verbal there. We're saying yes. So yes when we point, and he went when we call strike.
Yes, he went.
Yes, he went.
Yes, he went.
Now, if we get to a point in the game where we need to get a little bit more excited and it's strike 3, that's what this mechanic would look like.
Yes, he went.
Now we're signaling that batter is in fact out. So we're not signaling strike any longer. We're signaling, yes, he's out. And last but not least, our strike mechanic. Our strike mechanic is really the most individual of our signals. And so I'll just give a couple pointers about what a strike mechanic should look like. You should get tall, so come out of your stance. So from your squat, come up, get tall. snap off that signal.
I'm sorry, I thought my TV was on.
Make sure you're on mute there at home, everyone. So get tall, snap off that signal, mirror your voice and your mechanic. Your voice and mechanic should happen at the same time. Let's take a look at some strike calls. Oh, sorry. I got ahead of myself. I apologize. Here we have appeals on check swing.
Did he go?
This is what an appeal should look like.
Ball no.
Notice how the umpire moves out to the side and asks with an open hand to the base umpire. Also note that the mask stays on for check swing appeals. You do not need to take off your mask when you're asking your partner for a check swing appeal. This is what a bad check swing appeal would look like.
Ball no. Did he?
You can see the issue that could arise here because that lack of movement makes it confusing about what the umpire is saying. So the umpire, the plate umpire may confuse their partner by not taking the steps out to the side. I do think it's a good time to take a pause here and answer some of these questions.
Brian, I got a couple of questions for you.
Yep.
All right. So can our partner be anywhere on the field, or does he have to be an A when we ask for help?
So for check swing appeals, that partner can be stationed anywhere on the field, including a left-handed hitter with our partner in the A position. There are plenty of times that a plate umpire gets blocked out from seeing a check swing that is very obvious, and even a partner in the A position for a left-handed hitter can see that it's a swing. So the simple answer is always ask your partner if there's any doubt about the swing. We're going to talk more about check swings and the strategy on getting those correct and how we should ask later on.
All right, Brian, given the count, how soon after the pitch do you give the count? The pitcher a lot of times doesn't look to the plate until they are ready to go into a motion.
That would just be situational. If I don't think the pitcher needs to know the count, then I'm not necessarily worried about him. Sometimes the catcher will ask me to give it. If the catcher asks me to give it, then I'm going to make sure that the pitcher sees it. But what I don't want to do is wait so long that the pitcher has now towed the rubber and is ready to pitch again, and I'm worried about giving the count when there may be something for me to officiate. So sooner rather than later, if I know that I'm going to give the count. Couple other questions.
Can the umpire ask for an appeal on his own, or does it have to be asked for from the coach or a player?
That's a great question. This is something that we have really started to reinforce with our highest level umpires, and we're going to do that with all of our umpires, really, and that is, don't wait for someone to tell you to get help on a swing. If there's any doubt, if the batter puts that bat out over top of the plate and there's any doubt and someone is going to ask you later on to get help, just do it right away. Just ask right away, get it over with, and then we can move on to the rest of the game. What often happens is there's a check swing and we miss it as the plate umpire because the pitch was close or we get blocked out. And now the seconds start ticking off the clock. And now finally the defense says, hey, get help. That was a swing. And 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds later, we ask our partner, hey, did you have a swing? And we've all been out there on the bases in that situation. And every second that ticks off the clock, it becomes harder and harder to say, yes, he swung. So how do we prevent that? We ask right away as the plate umpire. Just ask, get the question out there, let your partner make their decision, and now we can move on to the rest of the game.
So smooth transition here. Drop third strike. Nobody on first base.
Let's just go ahead and push pause on uncaught third strikes. That's going to be a pretty big section of one of our later weeks, so we'll get into that, uncaught third strikes. Any other questions in there? You can get help from someone in the B or C position. Absolutely.
So Brian, let's say you ask for help and your partner tells you that yes, they went. What do we do next as the plate umpire?
Good question. So I've asked my partner, did he swing? They say, yes, he swung. Now I'm going to signal that it's a strike and get back to work. So I am going to confirm that it's a swinging strike, get back to work. And that would be a good time to give the count. That would be a good time to give the count. Let me address Chris Krokos' question. The check swing appeal signal should be done with whichever hand you want to your partner. If you're asking your partner, right? So you're not saying, yes, the batter swung, but you're asking your partner, whichever hand is more comfortable. Whichever hand is more comfortable. Because honestly, once we get to the point where you're asking the question, all of the issues around the plate with the baseball should have resolved themselves, right? So maybe there's going to be a tag attempt. That will have happened. We'll see that, and now we can go ask. So we're not so concerned with our arm being in front of our face for that, like we are with that immediate, yes, they swung. That's when we're concerned with our arm getting in front of our face. So whichever you're more comfortable with for asking your partner, you can step out to the side and ask with your right hand. You can step out to the side and ask with your left hand, whichever you like. So Jacob Perkins says, I've had coaches and even other umpires tell me I can't get help. They said they can't help me with a shrug look. Well, that's why we're on this call. Okay. That's why we're on this call, because there's a lot of bad information out there when it comes to umpiring baseball games, and we want to try to fix that. A lot of those questions can be dealt with simply by looking at the rule book. Check swing appeals must be asked to a partner when the defense asks you. So it's not a matter of their preference. It's a rule that if the defense tells you to get help, you have to get help. You have to get help. All right, we're going to get back on track, and we're going to look at some strike calls here. Strike calls. You can see getting nice and tall, snapping off that mechanic, and the mechanic and the verbal happen at the same time. Now, I'm sure that some of you sitting in here are saying he shouldn't turn his head when he gives a strike. And as a newer umpire, you should keep your head forward. You should keep your head forward, especially when you're newer to umpiring. However, there's going to be a point in your career that you progress to be able to make a decision about, can I turn my head or should I keep my head straight? And this is a good example of that. So if we have some sort of activity going on at the plate, like a pickoff attempt or a steal play or possible any kind of possible interference between the catcher and the batter, now we can keep our head forward. But when there's no runners on, we can certainly just go ahead and be as comfortable as we want. Call strikes the way that feels most natural. Forward. Now, last but teased a little strike three. My advice about strike threes, keep your strike three mechanics simple. Okay, don't overdo it with a bunch of different gyrations or movements or noises. Keep your strike three mechanics simple. This is what I prefer. Going back, our head stays forward. Not worried about bumping into the catcher or otherwise interfering with something that's going on. Okay, that was our segment on signals. Good questions from everyone that asked one. I do have one here from Corey that says, what do you do if you appeal and your partner did not see the play? So I assume you're talking about something other than a check swing, because a check swing, they have to have an opinion by rule, like we said. But if there's other situations that happen on the field and you ask your partner for an opinion and they don't have an opinion, then we stick with the call. We're going to talk in week 5. We're going to get to the section of this clinic where we talk about handling situations, rules, crew consultations, mentality. So we're going to get a lot more into that type of stuff. Bob with a question about verbalizing locations, and I'm going to push that one off until next week when we talk about working the plate and our strike zones. But that's a good question, and I'll make sure to address it then. Okay. I'm going to let this one roll, and we're going to talk about dealing with your mask. Dealing with your mask.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the United Umpires off-season workshop. We're going to talk about some of the basics when it comes to managing our mask, baseballs, our indicator, the little things that you really need to sharpen in order to be very comfortable with so that you can worry about actually officiating the baseball game. So, first thing we'll talk about is how we deal with our mask. And really, the most important piece of information is this mask stays in our left hand. Now, also in our left hand, we're going to find our indicator. You might be asking yourself, how do I deal with both my mask and my indicator in one hand? And the key really is holding our indicator with these bottom 2 fingers so that we can grab our mask with those other 3 fingers. So we've got our indicator in this hand. We can operate the wheels with our thumb and forefinger. And with those free fingers, we're going to grab our mask. Now, when we talk about putting the mask on, we don't put it on like a catcher. We don't grab it with one hand and put it on like this. We put it on like an umpire. And that means getting it nice and stable in your left hand, grabbing the back strap, and putting it on with some authority. Now that we've got our mask on, we've got to talk about how to get this thing off. And again, we're not catchers anymore. We can't flip this thing off with our thumb and let it go. What we need to do is have a plan for how to get this mask off and into our left hand with as little stress as possible. So how do we do that? Well, the key, having these 3 fingers free, grabbing the mask, starting out, away from the face, and then up. Now, notice, when I grabbed the mask, my head did not go down to my hand to grab it. My hand came up to my face. That allows me to be aware of all the things that I might need to officiate while getting my mask off, again, with as little stress as possible. Now, we've put our mask on, we've taken our mask off. How do we deal with our mask when we might be doing something else on the baseball field, like lineup cards? Well, I'm a fan of underneath the left arm. Underneath the left arm, and we remove it, put it back in our left hand, and back on our face. The reason I like it under my left arm is it keeps my right arm free to write when I'm dealing with lineup card changes. Hope that was a good lesson. work on taking your mask off while sitting on your couch at home, because you want to repeat this mechanic with as little stress as possible.
Okay. That is how we manage our mask. So if you've never thought about how you deal with your mask as an umpire before, that's something that we want to work on, because as you progress through your career, it's going to become more and more important that you're taking care of all the little details that go towards being a competent umpire. This is one of them. So for us in Central Pennsylvania, when we have our clinic this weekend, this is something that we're going to work on. We're going to put our masks on. We're going to take them off. We're going to put them back on. We're going to take them off again. We're going to do that until it becomes a automatic habit, something that we can do without thinking about it. John, good question with the lineup cards. Certainly reverse the right elbow, left elbow advice if you're left-handed. I don't want to be accused of being leftist. So let's look at how we manage our indicator.
All right, one of the other details that we need to manage as umpires is our indicator. We're going to hold this indicator in our left hand. We need to have our right hand free for signaling. So this indicator is in our left hand, and we're going to operate these wheels with our left thumb and one of our left fingers. We're going to operate the wheels like that. Now, moving the wheels should become a part of what you do when you're signaling ball or strike. So if I signal strike, there's an automatic movement for me where I'm moving that indicator wheel. What I don't like to see from umpires is signaling a strike and then looking at the indicator and moving the wheel. We've taken our focus off of what we need to do out on the field when we look down at that indicator. So the movement up with the indicator happens as part of our signal. Strike, and I advance the strike wheel. Now we get to the end of an at-bat, and however that at-bat ends, we've probably got our mask off because we're out on the infield and we've seen the play at first base, and we put our mask back on. We look at our indicator, and our indicator says 1 ball and 2 strikes. Now, one of the ways you can polish up your game is by advancing this indicator without having to stare at it. So if I know that this indicator is on 1 ball and 2 strikes, that means I need to advance it 1, 2, 3, 4 times on the ball side and 1, 2 times on the strike side to get back to 0 balls and 0 strikes. Work on the ability to deal with that indicator without having to stare at it and taking your focus away from the actual job of officiating the baseball game. Hope that helps.
Okay, so that's how we manage our indicator. And for the new umpires that are joining us, notice that we haven't called it a clicker one time tonight. Okay, we haven't called it a clicker one time tonight. Now, a good piece of advice that I don't use myself, but you might want to try is if you file a notch into the 0 of your indicator. So when your indicator is on 0, put a notch where your thumb or finger hits it so that you don't have to look at your indicator to find those zeros. So that's something that I know some umpires do. I've never done it myself because I've always just been comfortable to move it back to 0 without looking at it. But if you think that will help, certainly have at it. Baseballs up next, managing baseballs.
So one of the other details that we have to manage as an umpire that has nothing to do with making decisions about balls and strikes and safes and outs is baseballs. So we wear this ball bag on our hip that allows us to carry a supply of baseballs so that when one gets fouled away, we can easily give it to the catcher. Let's talk about this ball bag and how it should be positioned. It's on the side of our body, okay, on the side of your body, not around to the front, not around to the back. It's on the side of your body. Now, I wear one ball bag. I think that skinnier umpires look good with one ball bag. If you're under, say, a size 34 waist, one ball bag would probably be fine. As you get to be a little bit girthier, you can add that second ball bag to kind of balance you out a little bit. I will add a second ball bag for a place to put my hand when I'm dealing with cold weather. Now I have somewhere to put both of my hands to keep them from getting cold. So if it's chilly out, you'll see me wearing two ball bags. Another thing when we talk about this ball bag is if you just put your belt through it and let it sit, that opening is going to be pretty narrow. It's going to be pretty tight, and it's going to be hard to get your hand in there smoothly and get a ball out to give to the catcher. So how do we deal with that? What do we want to do to make this opening a little easier to deal with? Well, all I do is take my fingers and pinch from the front and the back, and you can see that kind of pops that opening out, and it makes it a lot easier to get a baseball out to give to whoever I need to give the baseball to. So now we've got some balls that are fouled off. I always have 5 balls in this ball bag, and once I lose 3, I have 2 remaining. I'm going to ask the ball boy for 4 more baseballs. I'm going to ask him for 4 more baseballs so that when the next pitch is fouled off again, the ball boy comes out with the 4 baseballs. I present my hands like this so that he can put the balls in there nice and easily. And I put the baseballs back in the ball bag, and now I'm back to my count of 5. If I ask the ball boy for 4 baseballs and I don't have one fouled off, let's just say the at-bat ends, so I've lost 1, 2, 3, I ask for 4, and he comes out, but I still have 2 in here. I'll say, hey, can I just have 3? And he'll give me 3 baseballs, and now I'm ready to go with my supply of 5 again. So that's a nice, easy way to manage baseballs as we're going. Sometimes what you'll see is you finish a play where your mask is off. So let's say the ball gets fouled off, but I had my mask off to observe. Now I'm going to go get baseballs with my mask, and I like to just present it to the ball boy or ball girl so that they can put the baseballs in there. And now I can easily take them out and put them in my ball bag, get my mask back on, and I'm ready to go.
Now, one note that I want to share about baseballs, getting baseballs, is, and this is something that we're going to talk about much more later on in the clinic, but this is a great opportunity for us to humanize ourselves. So it's very easy to just be the person behind the mask on the field, just the evil umpire, black shirt and a mask. Nobody really thinks about who you are. So a way that you can humanize yourself is by being polite to people. So what I like to do is ask for, hey, can I get 4 baseballs, please, Scott? I'm going to say please, and I'm going to use the name of the ball person to bring me baseballs. And then I'm going to face them, and if my mask's off, I'm going to smile, and I'm going to say thank you. Little things like that go a very long way to making us appear more human as umpires. And when you appear more human, people give you the benefit of the doubt. I do see some activity over in that chat box. Todd, is there anything we needed to take a look at?
Brian, it's talking about when let's see, Travis Webster asked about coaches throwing baseballs to him.
Yeah. So it's a great idea to dissuade people from tossing you a baseball for this exact point. You don't want to look bad if you don't catch one. And so what I'll tend to do is find a quiet moment and say, hey, I would really appreciate it if you would just run the baseballs out. I'm not that good at catching. And here again, we've humanized ourselves by making a joke at our own expense. And rather than kind of screaming to the side, you know, if they're about to throw you a baseball and you say, hey, don't throw it, run it out here. We've turned that into a negative situation. we can turn that into a positive by quietly asking them one-to-one, hey, would you guys mind just running them out here so that I don't have to worry about catching it? I forgot my umpire glove today, something like that. So it's absolutely fine to ask them to walk the baseballs out, or you could certainly have them throw them to the catcher if that's a speedier option in that circumstance. Any other questions to deal with? Okay, let's move on and talk about the plate meeting and the national anthem. The plate meeting and the national anthem. So we are walking onto the field, ready to go to work. And this is where we set the tone for how people are going to perceive us for that game. And you can see our two umpires here are walking next to one another and striding with a purpose to the plate. You don't want to look like you don't want to be there. You don't want to look like you are two individuals operating separately. You want to look like a crew who is going out onto the field. So now we get to the plate, and our plate umpire stands behind home plate with our base umpire out in front. And we're going to get the lineup cards from one side. We're going to deal with those. And then we're going to get the lineup cards from the other side. We're going to deal with those. Of course, we'll have a handshake with the coaches at some point, more than likely. When I get the lineup cards, I do give them a quick look to make sure that all the positions are appropriately filled and that they've noted their DH if that's part of the rule set. I also want to make sure that there are no duplicate names, and if they are in fact duplicate names, that they're brothers or cousins and not the same person. So once I do that, I'm going to facilitate an exchange of those lineup cards. So I'm going to make sure that they each have a copy of the other side if they need to. And about that time, I'm going to ask the head coach to give us the ground rules. So the head coach is going to give us the ground rules. In some places, the umpire in chief or the plate umpire will give the ground rules, and that's fine, especially if we're at a neutral site like one of our travel facilities. We're going to talk very briefly about the ground rules. It's good to rehearse those beforehand so you know exactly what you're going to say. In most leagues these days, we're doing something like verifying that that all players are properly equipped. So we want to get that out there. And what I don't love hearing at plate meetings is statements about arguing. Okay. I don't love setting the tone for the day by saying, here's how you're going to argue. Now, everyone has their own show to run, and you can make your own decision about if you think that's good or bad. But when we talk about arguing right off the top, I think that sets the tone that we're almost expecting it to happen. So I'm not a huge fan of getting into discussions about how arguing should or shouldn't happen. Once we're done with the plate meeting and we're about to start the national anthem, we're going to see our umpires take a similar position on either side of the plate. If there's a catcher in between us, of course, we would move to the side just a little bit further. And let's take note of the position that our umpires are standing in right now. They have their heels together with their toes at about a 45-degree angle. The plate umpire has his mask under his elbow. The base umpire has his left arm extended down his side. And when we're ready to go, we're going to bring our hand up to our heart with our cap in our hand. With our cap in our hand. So this is the first image we're presenting to everybody involved with the baseball game. We want it to be a good one. What we don't want is an image like we see from the umpire on the left side of our screen here. You can see two umpires positioned very nicely with their heels together and their arm at their side. And then our third umpire really stands out with their feet apart and their hand just kind of loosely down, and their right hand down towards the middle of their body rather than up towards their heart. And we're going to multiply that one by about 1 million and come up with this photo here of a crew that, unfortunately doesn't look like it's prepared to officiate a game with much professionalism. So think about the way you stand for the national anthem, and let's do that correctly to set the tone for the day.
So Brian, if I can jump in real quick.
Please do.
Brian spoke about not asking or directing how the coach needs to argue or question you. In our state here with Georgia, GHSA pretty much requires you to have a statement in your pregame about the coach and how he's going to handle himself. And so what I would suggest to all of you is make sure that you're following what your assigner or your governing body is asking you to do in the game that you're working that day.
Good advice, Todd. Thank you for dropping that in. I appreciate it. Okay. We are right around our 90-minute mark, and that's perfect because we've arrived at our last slide for the evening. And what I really hope is that we've laid some groundwork for you to start a successful umpiring career, or to help others achieve that success if you're an instructor. Regardless, let's talk about fundamentals and why they're so important. Well, just like the best players in the world, we need to build a foundation of fundamentals. We need to build that foundation so that we have something to stand on. Now, we also have to continually seek to analyze those fundamentals and ourselves. It's very easy as umpires to just go out onto the field in game mode and never analyze yourself. Because here's the reality of the game of baseball. Most of the game doesn't need us to umpire it. Most of the game is very easy and it umpires itself. This is a trap. Okay. This is the trap of umpiring. Don't get sucked into this false sense of security where nothing is going wrong. Think of, rather, every single play that you have as an umpire as an opportunity to continue your education. Am I using my eyes properly? How was my footwork on that play? Did I handle that situation the way I should have? Ask those questions of yourself at every turn, and I promise what you're going to see are some good results in the long run. Now, I promised that we would give you all Nobu's contact information. If working for United is something that you're interested in, whether that's at one of our travel facilities or at the college level, you're going to reach out and contact Nobu. He's especially going to help you if you're interested in the travel side of things. And I also want to point out our social media, which, if you're not already following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, please go ahead and do so. There is a lot of good information on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. If hopefully this segment tonight made you hungry for more information about umpiring, jump over to the YouTube page, and there's probably about 400 hours worth of instructional videos that you can take a look at. So with that, I'll close things up for tonight, unless there are any questions that are lingering in anyone's mind. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Thanks so much, everyone, for your attention. I'm very excited about the rest of this month. These sessions are only going to get better and get more into the details of what it takes to be a competent umpire. So that's something that we're very excited to share with you all. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Great session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch, Brian.
My pleasure, everyone.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Great job.
If I did see somebody type into the chat box that they have a question, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question if you want to do that. Nikita, YouTube page for United Umpires. I bet you can figure out what it is.
So if I have to miss one of these virtual meetings, where will I be able to watch them afterwards?
We will send a link to the recording to you, but they'll also exist on our website.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kita, just go ahead and search for United Umpires on YouTube, and you'll see our logo and our channel come up. I promise you'll find it.
Brian?
Yes?
If I may, I'm sorry to go back to the check swing, if I could, one question.
Sure.
The actual check swing is something that happens extremely fast. And based on the mechanic of the batter trying to check his swing, the breaking of the shoulder and the bat crossing the actual plate, the very front or the top of the plate, is that the determination that you come to ensure that he has or has not checked his swing?
Well, let's start with the rule, and that's always a good place to start when we're talking about these things. The rules are different in professional and college baseball, and I assume also different in high school baseball. I can tell you what they are in professional and college baseball, and that is professional baseball. It is simply an attempt by the batter to strike at the pitch. So that's very open to the interpretation of a given umpire, and that's why check swings are argued so often. In college baseball, the rule is defined, or a swing is defined as the barrel of the bat passing the front hip of the batter. I don't know if you can see me on camera right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share if I can. But once the barrel of the bat passes the front hip of the batter, that is deemed a swing attempt in college baseball. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's different things that we're talking about.
There's these two black boxes. One of these are like router receptors that connect.
Make sure that we're muted here, guys.
I got him.
So, having said all that, it's a difficult call. They're hard. Calling check swings from the bases is very difficult. Calling check swings from the plate is very difficult. We're going to talk later on about some strategies that you can use, but I'll tell you that being concerned with the location of the barrel is a fool's errand. I'm struggling to find a better term. I'm not calling you a fool, but it's impossible to figure out exactly where that barrel stops. Okay, that's impossible. What I can do is see exactly what the batter's actions were, and did they open their hips and then flip their wrist, right? Or was it a late attempt to possibly fight off a pitch that then they realized was out of the zone? So open hips and flip, that barrel is out in front of my body. That's a swing. Versus I haven't opened my hips, and all my hands did was move to the middle of my body, and now my wrists flip. That's not a swing. So I like to look at the batter's actions as a whole to really help me decide whether they swung or not. I can't see how far the barrel gets, not with human regular speed vision. It doesn't work. What I can tell you is that they almost always swing. Okay. So I really look at this as, you better prove to me that you didn't swing, because when you look at these on video, and like we talked about, we're umpiring for video, they almost always get that barrel out in front of the body. And that means that's a swing.
Brian, I had a quick question. I'm sorry, because when you said it, I got your video, my audio kind of broken up. What was the preferred times you said you like to give the counts you mentioned?
I do it on 3-2.
Right.
And I'm not going to do it on 2-2.
Correct.
Or 3-1, because that's
right.
immediately before 3-2. So I don't want to do it back-to-back pitches. So I'm going to back it up one more pitch. So if I'm not going to do it on 3-1, now I'm going to do it on 2-1. So I do it on 2-1, 1-2, and 3-2. But to be honest, if my at-bat is just flowing through and we don't have any interruptions with foul balls or whatever else, and the scoreboard is on top of the count, then I'm not going to give the count until I get to 3-2. Now, that's working games with scoreboards that are operational and on top of things. As soon as the scoreboard misses the count a couple times, I'm going to take back over and make sure that we're on the right track.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You got it, buddy. Good question.
Yeah.
Brian, I had one.
Lay it on me.
This comes about dressing. I don't know if you've seen my question in the chat, but I noticed that when you were doing the plate meeting in Anthem, that you had your black convertible on. I was told not to wear that behind the plate. Is that sufficient?
That's weird advice. I've never heard that. I was just wearing it because that's what we brought to match, and I wasn't necessarily dressed for the plate. However, what I'll say is this: if it's windy or cold or raining and I don't want to wear a long sleeve plate shirt because there's moisture, I have worn that convertible jacket on the plate before. Now, I do think it's important, if you're going to wear that convertible jacket, to tuck it in to your plate pants.
Yes.
If you leave that out, now it starts to look a bit sloppy, and now it's harder to deal with your ball bags.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't say don't ever wear it. That's weird advice. And that's one of those things that, like, you know, somebody got the idea 20 years ago that you shouldn't wear that jacket, and then they just kept saying that to everybody that they came across.
Okay. Appreciate you.
You got it.
See you next week.
Absolutely. Can't wait. Anybody else?
Brian, what's our uniform for Sunday?
I'm going to send Central Pennsylvania umpires an email tonight or tomorrow morning with all the information you need for Sunday.
Thank you.
Got it.
Oh, Brian, are you going to go over, because I've had some conflicting things somewhere in the thing about drop third strikes, about the signaling of giving drop third strikes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Either week 2, I think week 3 is when we're going to cover that.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
Hey, Brian, this is Nikita Ransom. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Nikita.
Hey, I do Division II JUCO baseball. And I have one assigner that, and he always tells us, if you're not comfortable in the box, the scissors is the way to go. What do you prefer we stay in?
I prefer that you get your head into a position where you can see as much of the strike zone consistently as possible. And so I honestly think we get too concerned with what's going on with our lower body, like how our feet are positioned. And really, it should be all about where my head ends up. And am I in a spot where I can see into the whole strike zone and make judgments about where the ball is over top of the plate? So whatever that is for you, get your head there. For me, and for every umpire who has come through the system in the last probably 15 years, the answer to the feet question is the box. That's the more common practice these days. And the reason is, let's see if I can demonstrate this. Here, I'm going to take my video filter off here. See if I can do that quickly. No, that's not it. That's not it. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm not having luck with that, so you're just gonna have to deal with this. So when I go down in the box, right?
Yes, sir.
My head stays pretty neutral. Okay. When I go down in the scissors, because I'm leaning so far forward, what happens to my head is it goes like this. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now that I'm in this position here, do you see how my neck has already gone back almost to the end of its range of flexibility?
Yes, sir.
Now, what happens when I get hit with a pitch? So because my neck is already at its extended flexion here, it's already almost maxed out. When I get hit with a pitch, I don't really have much room to kind of give with that. Versus if I'm in a normal box position and I get hit, I have a little bit more freedom for my head to move. So that's why umpires who went to umpire school after the year 2005, I think, were all taught use the box because it's safer. So there's a long answer to your short question.
I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you down the road somewhere soon.
Absolutely.